Well, there's this video that's been going around lately. It's an interview of Mehdi Hasan interviewing a Democratic Congressman, Dean Phillips, and they talk about the Israel-Gaza war and a recent Israeli raid into Palestinian territory where they freed 4 Israeli prisoners at a cost of more than 200 Palestinian dead and hundreds more injured. So this gets into the moral complexity of the situation and why it is that so many American politicians are willing to support Israel no matter what. And Mehdi Hasan asks some very tough questions which lead to some uncomfortable answers that show a lot about the politics and the way power works in the United States. So I'm going to play these clips here and make some remarks. By the way, if you like what I'm doing, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it so much.
The other week, we saw 4 Israeli hostages rescued from inside of Gaza by an Israeli military and police operation, returned to their families. A very good thing. President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, all reacted with praise, with celebration. None of them, in their initial responses, had a single word to say about the over 200 Palestinians reportedly killed, over 700 injured in that rescue operation, many of them innocent women and children.
Already he's made a very good point, just by laying the groundwork for his upcoming question, talking about the reaction from the highest U.S. officials to this operation. Just bringing out that point that so many people died, so many people were injured, so many of them civilians, and yet there was no mention of them, no remorse showed for them from the United States government. What Mehdi Hasan is going to do throughout these clips is really show the absurdity of the moral discrepancy between how people react when things happen to one group of people versus when they react to another group of people.
A lot of people have been asking this for the last 8-9 months. I'm sure you hear it in your constituency. Do Palestinian lives just not matter to the modern Democratic Party?
Oh, I think that's a horrifying statement. Let me acknowledge let me acknowledge the 38,000 human beings killed in Gaza, the 1,200 Israelis, but particularly the innocents. To me, it's all the same. They're human beings. I'm appalled and disgusted.
That's a very good answer. You know, that's what you would expect of someone who has their head on straight and their morals straight. And you lament the loss of lives, regardless of who they are, regardless of which side those lives are lost on. Now, this is going to be an issue throughout this interview where on many occasions, Dean Phillips does seem to have empathy and a moral standard for the situation, but he wavers between his morality and the political expediency of what American politicians can or cannot say about this war.
First of all, there are Americans being held hostage. Let me change the lens for a moment. I believe, if anything, it has been the United States and the Biden administration should have been the foremost responsibility to extract our hostages, our nationals. I think there are 6 or 7 still, we don't know even if they're alive. So the question is, would we undertake an effort to extract American hostages, 2, 3, 4, 7, if we knew 200 civilians would be killed in the process?
What's the answer?
Or that's a tough, that's a tough question. That's a tough question.
Just think about what politics and nationalism and power can do to somebody's brain to the point where they think it's a dilemma, a tough question, whether you would sacrifice hundreds of people for the freedom of a few. But that's what the structures of this modern world do to people, where they start seeing things through the lens of nationality, borders, laws, political expediency, and they see that as being on a level of morality alongside with saving lives. Well, how do you pick between the two? What a tough question. Well, most people are screaming, no, that's not a tough question at all.
If you're the leader of a country, absolutely.
You killed 200 people to save 6.
And if those 200 people were not from a third world country that's not even recognized as a country, this would not be considered a moral dilemma. The answer would be much more obvious even to someone like Dean Phillips. And Mehdi Hasan is doing a great job here of asking these questions, directing the conversation, and pointing out the absurdity of the way that the powerful treat the weak, the way that those who have the ability to grant life or death, the way they deal it out, the way they exercise that power based on people's status, based on where people were born, based on the papers that they hold.
I believe, as the President of the United States, his or her obligation should always be the safety and security of Americans first. It does not mean dismissing other humanity. But in the case of hostages, when it comes to this, and we've tried this before, and we've seen carnage. The fact of the matter is, I think we should extract. And by the way, if that means there are civilian deaths as a result, unfortunately, that's, I think, a cost.
Well, the cost implies there's no other choice. We, of course, know that there was another way to get the hostages out.
In a lot of ways, unfortunately, this kind of attitude is unique to American politicians. Most people in power in different countries around the world do not have the option, when dealing with the situation, the option to use overwhelming military force, kill untold numbers of some other country's people in order to rescue your own people. Most people don't have that option. But the fact that the United States does have that option, I think, has a corrupting effect on the people in power in the United States, where when you have the ability to do something so terrible, that this is like a tool in your toolbox. That has a repressive effect on one's humanity, I think. It lowers the way that people think. It lowers the way that people see the world and the way they see others. It's a dangerous and corrupting power that hurts the souls of the people who wield it.
We got over 100 hostages out in a deal in November. You could have got Benjamin Netanyahu blocking another deal. But I want to be very specific. In your view, is killing 274 Palestinians, including many children, an acceptable price to pay for the freeing of 4 Israelis?
Like I said, I don't. You want a clear answer.
Yeah.
You want to make this black and white.
Is it an acceptable price to pay?
It's an unacceptable price, but I think it's a price that has to be paid.
The whole world sees this kind of stuff, and they have been seeing it for decades. And this is why so many countries turn away from the United States, turn away from Europe and the NATO powers. They see the way that the Western powers rank the value of lives, and this is such an obscenity to the people who see it. It's so absurd, so horrible on its face, so unnatural, just against inborn human morality that people reject it, and they reject the countries in power that hold on to these terrible kinds of attitudes.
If you're saying that to get free people from the clutches of horrible captivity, hostages, people possibly being abused in captivity, to free them, you have to pay a price, right? It's a horrible price. Does that ratio work the other way? How many Israelis can Palestinians kill in order to free Palestinian detainees who are currently being tortured in Israeli captivity, some of them being raped to death, according to the New York Times last week?
Well, this is such a good, obvious follow-up question, and I'm so glad that Mehdi Hasan asked this, because this is just going to show the terrible morality of the answers that Dean Phillips has been giving. Of course, Dean Phillips knows what's right or wrong. No, you can't kill hundreds of people to free a few. Of course you can't. So flip it over, and he'll suddenly start seeing things in a much more realistic and sane way. Unfortunately, it's because you flip the nationalities, you flip the kinds of people on each side of the equation.
Can they kill 200 Israelis? Hold on, let me finish the question.
No,
can they kill 200 Israelis to free 4 Palestinians who are being tortured in an Israeli prison?
I think it's a question that I'm sure Palestinians are asking the same way as Israelis.
No. You answered it. You answered it for Israel. I would like you to answer it in reverse. This is an Israeli dungeon that CNN and New York Times have both reported on. UN investigated. So to free people from that prison, can you kill lots of innocent people according to the logic of the raid in Gaza?
What I'm trying to say is, if you represent the Palestinian people, you represent the Israeli people, we look at this quite differently. I don't want to say,
you do, which is why I'm asking the question. I understand that you see it differently. A lot of people watching at home say, why aren't all lives equal?
They should be.
But they're not.
Well, great conversation, very revealing, great expose on the mindsets of people in power. And actually, I commend Dean Phillips for being willing to have this interview and have this conversation. I think he shows that he does have some values, some morals. He's not an amoral person, but the way he sees things are twisted by things that are unnatural. They're twisted by human constructs of nationality, of diplomacy, of alliances, of superpower. And Mehdi Hasan, with his good questioning and his follow-up questions, really exposes the moral dilemma that the United States and Israel face on these issues. There is such a gulf between the teachings of the world and the teachings of the New Testament. I know I've said this many times, but it is repetitive because it bears repeating. You cannot rank the value of people's lives by these arbitrary standards. There is a higher standard that we must learn and live by. We have to start with the basics, seeing people's worth, seeing the value in people, not because of their status, not because of their nationality, not because of what part of the world they were born in, and beware of the corruption of power, the corruption of money. I'm going to read a few lines here from the Apostle Paul's first epistle to Timothy, where he talks about the corrupting influence of money on the soul. And that's kind of at the heart of a lot of this. You can't have the power without money, and the pursuit of that power, the pursuit of that money, the pursuit of that influence, it corrupts. And once people hold it, it corrupts them even more as they attempt to wield it and attempt to hold on to it. And they're afraid of losing it, and they're afraid of upsetting this false balance of power that they've created. But they which will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things, and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses. Well, thanks so much for watching. Please let me know what you think about all this. Leave your comments below. I put a link to the full interview below in the description. There's a lot that I didn't cover, and I'm sure you'd enjoy watching the whole thing. And I look forward to talking to you again later. Bye for now.